welcome back to another episode of FLINT Talks. If you listened to our episode last month, you would have heard that the FLINT team attended the Tech Users Summit by TUANZ in Auckland. As part of that summit, TUANZ also held their Member Awards, where one award was for Outstanding Future Leader. This year, this was won by the wonderful Alex Stewart of WombatNet in Wellington. Craig Young, the CEO of TUANZ, had a chat with Alex this month for the Tech Bites podcast, and so what we've done is actually repurpose that conversation into a FLINT Talks episode, which is the episode you are just about to listen to. If you're watching on screen, you'll see a picture of Alex having received his Outstanding Future Leader Award on the day, which we're absolutely proud of him for. So if you're keen to hear more about Alex, his story of starting an ISP when he was merely 14 years old, please keep listening, and of course make sure you check him out on LinkedIn. That's Alex Stewart from WombatNet. Enjoy the episode.
Well, kia ora, good afternoon, and welcome to this month's Tech Bites. I'm Craig Young, I'm the CEO of TUANZ, Technology Users Association. Welcome to episode, I think it might be 52 of Tech Bites NZ, something we started in COVID and have continued on. And really excited to talk today with someone I've known for quite a while, though I did first see him on television. I think it was 7 Sharp or one of those programs. Young Alex Stewart from, you are smart, Alex Stewart from Wellington, and he can talk about exactly where he comes from. But look, Alex was also the winner of this year's Outstanding Future Leader at our TUANZ Member Awards for the mahi that he's been doing over the last couple of years. Look, Alex, some of our listeners may be aware of your story and have seen the TV clips years ago, but not many anymore. So why not by way of introduction? What do you do? Where's your hometown? What was it like growing up? And where are you based now?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for bringing me on here and giving me the opportunity to speak. So my name's Alex Stewart. For those who don't know, I'm the founder and managing director of WombatNet, which is a small regional broadband provider currently based in Wellington. So I grew up in Wanganui, which seems to be from your previous guest, seems to be a bit of a breeding ground for tech leaders. So it was a pretty small town, sort of close knit upbringing. Relatively for me. I was given a pretty free range as a kid. I think that that had its downsides, but I think my parents used to have a nickname for me. They used to call me Fiddler, because not in that sense, but because I would always pull things apart, often unable to put them back together. So I often didn't have many nice things as a result. But I was always highly inquisitive, always reading manuals and trying to figure out how things work. So now I'm based in Upper Hutt. Actually, as we were chatting before, I just moved here to be closer to our biggest cluster of customers and infrastructure. And so, as I touched on, I run a regional provider. We focus on practical connectivity for people who are usually at the back of the queue. And I think for me, everything falls back to connectivity being not just a service, but being a foundation for participation in modern New Zealand life. That's me.
Well, let's go a little bit back and about the story about WombatNet and the genesis, because as I said, I'd seen you on TV. Now, you were very old when you did that clip. So can you tell us a little bit about, how old you were, where the idea came from, what the initial problem was when you started out on this journey?
Yeah, so it's a bit interesting, and I made the mistake of not journaling or anything like that. So I kind of the chronography of it all kind of is a bit mixed up. I didn't think it would end like this, obviously, but it started through obviously through my curiosity, but I was with my dad in a beach settlement called Turakina, just outside of my hometown Wanganui. So my dad was out there doing a perk job for one of his mates who happened to be one of the community coordinators. And so being a young face in a, shall I say, a retirement type community, that sort of lead and a couple others came up to me, saying, look, our internet and our phones are useless out here. Is there anything you can do to help? We've approached the mobile providers and Chorus, and they're not going to help us unless we have, a couple hundred grand to give them, which just sort of didn't work for that community. So that was sort of when I realized that, there are a lot of communities. It's a bit different now, but back then, there were a lot of communities that struggle with connectivity, which is quite obvious to me now. And I started to sort of understand that, without that connectivity, you're sort of shut out of modern life. Government services, school, work, all of that, it becomes very easy to become isolated in almost every way in our, sort of evolving all digital world. So sort of around that time, my uncle tragically passed away, and he left behind a container load of all this gear that he'd collected over his life. He was, according to my family, he was the first person. And I say according to my family because I think they probably speak quite highly of him, but there's no sort of record. But he was they say he was the first to use satellite broadband for FPOS at remote events, the old IP star system. I'm sure you'll be aware of. And so inside that container, it was my job to sort of go through and see what we could sell and that sort of thing. And I found amongst all the gear, I found these set of wireless bridges. And so I started sort of tinkering around. I became really interested in sort of what the gear could do. I remember I put one up outside my bedroom window, thinking that I could when I'm walking home from school, I'd be able to get Wi-Fi for the music on my phone. But I realized it didn't quite work that way. But yeah, nevertheless, then we had some cameras down at Dad's commercial building in town, and we could see the house from there. We wanted to be able to see the cameras when we were at home, and so I just sort of playing around, and then realized that you can send massive amounts of data just through the air, and obviously that's a sort of a given these days. But to me, when I was sort of learning about it all at that sort of young age of 14, it was all quite interesting. So Dad heard on the radio that there was a new scheme called the Rural Innovation Lab that was funded through the PGF, the Provincial Growth Fund. And so as I say, there's no journal, so I can't remember the exact process of it all, but I applied to it with my idea of helping out this rural beach settlement, because I thought this gear exists, so I can do something with it, and I was very ambitious and thought I'd be able to get it all done in a weekend sort of thing. So I was fortunate enough to, once I applied, I was selected as one of the for a small cohort of projects that they decided to support. I received $5,000 in seed funding, along with 6 weeks of intensive mentoring, which supported me in the future sort of investment rounds and that sort of thing. And it culminated in presenting as Parliament, which for me as a 14-year-old was something that I never thought I'd do. I remember being told by my mum's partner, "Oh, mate, maybe you'll be able to." We were talking about child support, and it was like, maybe you'll be able to stand at the steps of Parliament one day, and announcing a change. But I realised I could actually do something much bigger than that. But yeah, and so then the first articles came out. At that stage, I realised that there was no turning back. I had to do it now. And so I then began to be quite quickly inundated with readers from all over the Motu who were suffering from similar issues to that of Turakina. That's when I sort of started to realise that it was a bigger problem than just this community. And so I quickly decided that it wasn't just going to be a hobby, that, that this work, this initiative is needed. And so in 2019, I decided to turn that into WombatNet and a proper company. And so, yeah, so it began as a One Valley problem, and that community, turned it into a mission.
Amazing story, Alex. I mean, we're talking about, teenagers starting a wireless ISP in an area. And you had mentoring, you had a little bit of capital, but then what were some of the biggest hurdles you faced at that point once you decided to do it? What were some of the biggest hurdles you've faced so far, and some of those early wins that sort of kept you going?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of both. I think the two biggest issues for me were obviously my age and the inability to secure funding. And the two were often linked. So I started when I was 14. I couldn't have started any earlier. I think, or it probably would have been a bit irresponsible for my parents. But yeah. So I mean, I started when I did, and I missed the RBI schemes by a year or two. So we were a bit, or I was a bit, the opportunities were a bit different. And so, yeah, so we had no government support, no contracts, and we're bootstrapped from day one. And so being young obviously meant that I was often not taken seriously. I was thinking about this earlier, that when I was involved with the Rural Innovation Lab, one of the sort of the gold sponsors of the project was Microsoft. And I'll try not to say anything too, but yeah, they were. I don't know what the exact premise was of the sponsorship, but I know that at some of the events that I was presenting at of theirs, the Microsoft rep that they had was also presenting their Farm Beats technology that used TV white spaces to promote on-farm connectivity. And obviously I didn't understand then, but looking back now, I wasn't given a chance to collaborate there, and was made to feel quite invisible, even though they were supposed to be supporting the projects that had been selected. I guess, for whatever reason, whether it was because of my age or I don't know, but I mean, that's what I would be led to believe. Just sort of wasn't, almost like it was like, oh, well, this kid doesn't know what he's talking about. This project will be above his head, that sort of thing. And so obviously that came with that came naivety, which I think for me was a bit of a double-edged sword. The good side of it was that it meant that I was, stubborn enough to keep going. I was always, dreaming big, and never stopped, and never let the Herald comment section get to me. But the harder part of it, as I said before, was that I often didn't understand why adults didn't trust or believe in me, and I expected that they'd be welcoming me with open arms. And so that ignorance was a bit of a shield. And if I'd known how stacked the odds were, I might not have kept going. So yeah, I mean, there was sadly, in terms of support, there was very little industry backing in terms of the wireless internet provider circle, which had there have been, things may have been different. But I did receive some crucial and kind support from kind folk like Ernie Newman. He was a big supporter of me right from the beginning. And help sort of open some doors, and those people, as long as there were one or two people there who were telling me that what I was doing was right, and that I would get there in the end, that's sort of what kept me going. So I think our first sort of win, after I moved to the Kapiti Coast, I had to locate an area nearby where we could start building. This was post our first investment round, and so we lit up our first valley just before COVID, At that point in time, obviously cost was an important consideration, as it still is, but I also lacked any practical experience in really doing anything. And so this site was just a cabinet bolted to a chimney, with the end, and this was a big, up on a hill. And so I remember being up there on the roof, and the owners were like saying to my mum, like, do you think your kid's crazy doing this? Like, do you think this is okay? Like me, like a child up on the roof, but yeah, it was pretty rough, but it worked. And so yeah, that community that tower serviced, I later found out that they'd long been petitioning MPs, Chorus, the communications minister, because they were just outside the UFB footprint, and felt quite isolated and forgotten, even though there were a lot of homes here. And so yeah, so when we started doing the first few connections, seeing the joy on their faces when they were finally connected was really huge for me. And you might not see that now because connectivity has shifted over the years, but almost every person who we went and connected, they'd say, we'd never have thought that someone from Spark or Vodafone would actually come out here and just fix it like this. We've been waiting decades for this to happen, and some teenager comes along and does it for us. So yeah, so I mean, around that time, obviously, that's when COVID hit, and we all know what happened there. And so with everyone, moving to work from home and learn from home, we found that the copper networks in these areas started to collapse. They just obviously couldn't sustain the load. Were never designed to. And so our small network sort of became the difference between working from home, phone video calling, and being cut off. And for me, that was sort of the proof point, is that sort of, we weren't just building towers, we were keeping people connected to what mattered most and when it mattered most. And so yeah, so I mean, the funding has always been the biggest hurdle for us. I mean, schemes like the telecommunications development levy aren't really structured to include or support grassroots players. But yeah, I mean, I just say that if 100% by 2030 is just a slogan, well, 100% by 2030 is just a slogan, if there isn't space for providers like us to play our part.
Yeah, I agree completely. Hey, look, I want to pick up on that comment you made about a shift, how things have shifted since you started. And so how have your plans from what you do evolved from those early days, and what sort of technological shifts or strategic decisions have you made to keep up and to keep moving forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, things have been changing really quickly, haven't they? I really wish I had a bit more understanding of the history of some of these problems, but I wasn't around and in the thick of it to sort of understand. But I mean, obviously it started as an idea, one hilltop, one valley. We've now shifted to in Wellington, we're servicing hundreds of homes and businesses through a multi-site regional network. Milestones, we got that 5K grant and mentoring, which put the foundations in place. We got that first tower up. Then we through sort of 2021, 22, we continued to expand, building more transmitters. In 2023, we signed an agreement with One New Zealand to be able to sell the 4G and 5G fixed wireless, which was really important for us because that allowed us to sell to areas that we didn't have infrastructure in, but also because our wireless network runs on 5 gigahertz, which can't really penetrate through trees. There are a lot of people who we had to say no to, and that wasn't something I really liked. So now we are sort of moving towards some of the next gen technologies like 60 gig wireless, and other technologies that can sort of work to bring fiber like speeds in these rural areas. And so yeah, I mean, in terms of the industry, well, I mean, at least for me, I sort of realized that we're not just an ISP. What I sort of started to like calling the company was, or the model was, sort of a connectivity aggregator model. And I know that most internet providers will have multiple delivery methods. But for us, it was that when customers come to us, we don't want to just sell them a product. We want to solve their problem regardless of what the problem is. Whether that's through fiber, fixed wireless, 5G, or satellite, or whatever else there is. So so it's sort of like, fiber is the backbone, wireless is the reach, and then satellite is the the last mile when geography laughs at you, which is quite a common thing here. And so obviously, I mean, I think the biggest change to our industry has been low Earth orbit satellite and Starlink. It's been a turning point. We've had to. It's been interesting to manage, because obviously coming into the business, I had no idea that Starlink was coming, and so I've had to work around that. But we've had to use it for some customers, where the technologies that we use interfere with, like high voltage lines going over their homes and that sort of thing. But it's phenomenal technology, absolutely phenomenal. But I think that their model leaves people alone when things go wrong. And for Kiwis, I think that's something that doesn't really sit right for a lot of people.
Let's have a look at talk a bit more about that, because you talked about it being an aggregator, and you talked about in your community. So what would you say? Would you say that was your core philosophy and guiding principle behind WombatNet? Especially in how you approach customers and communities.
Yeah, well, I think it's always been about trust first. Customers. It's hard, because I mean we've had customers switch to us who say that they've been with their incumbent for 30 years, and they're just sick of it for whatever reason. But I think people actually don't buy megabits. They don't buy the product. They buy the connection and the confidence. And so I think that for Kiwis especially, real person support is really important. Especially when something goes wrong, our customers get a human. It's often me, and we provide urgent service, that day if possible. There's no $300 surprise call outs, or wait 3 weeks, or post in a forum and hope. And we sort of try to act like we're neighbours, not just provider. I mean, I think it's every connection is critical. There's sort of a especially with some of the critical restoration procedures in terms of fiber. Obviously there's no priority given to residential customers. And I think that when we sort of, obviously that's because it's at scale, but when we start to sort of think about people in that way, where only large businesses and corporations are actually important, we start to sort of leave the community behind, because every person is important. And they don't need to explain why. They might need to be talking to someone, their dying loved one, or whatever. I mean, it's always important to maintain that, but it all matters to the person on the other end. And I think it's a fast line is useless if nobody picks up the phone when it goes down.
Yeah, true.
And so we keep always asking, we're still asking, is it cost, confidence, or coverage that's holding people back? Because it's difficult to know, because often customers don't even know what their own barriers are. But yeah, we're constantly asking, how can we solve that, and how can we break down those barriers to access?
So where do you see yourself in WombatNet in, say, 5 to 10 years? And then you've already talked about Starlink, but are there any other specific technologies or services you're looking to integrate or develop?
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of sort of the big picture for me and WombatNet, we still want to be solving problems, but hopefully on a bigger stage. I think Starlink has sort of taken away um, some of the focus on rural connectivity. Obviously, we're now moving towards more focus on digital equity and that sort of thing. But problems still remain. We want to grow into more regions. We want closer partnerships with iwi and local councils, and other community groups. The focus is always still resilience, fairness, and inclusion. But looking ahead, the problems obviously get bigger. So the toolkit has to grow as well. And so, as I touched on before, I am uh, uh, really excited about the 60 gig and other high frequency microwave technologies that can work to deliver those fiber like experiences where fiber will may take longer to get there. And we build them all. We always approach these builds as not stop gaps, but systems that are designed to last. And I mean, in terms of the sort of the wider landscape, through our memberships with associations like TUANZ and FLINT, and through our work lobbying, we've sort of really advocated for smarter spectrum use, because we know that New Zealand's a bit slow to move in that space. The other things like mesh networks, which introduced layered resilience, so that we get networks that bend, not break. And obviously satellite is part of the mix. Starlink's. I keep mentioning Starlink. It's Starlink's. I mean, it's showing what's possible. But I'm really excited about Amazon Kuiper because of the way that they've sort of tried to demonstrate that they're going to be more looking towards a partnership based model or approach. And that whole sort of ecosystem only works if it's sustainable and fair, and lets local providers support their customers and their outcomes. And yeah, so I mean, for our own product direction at the short term, we've been working on bundling connectivity with devices and digital skills support. Because as demonstrated in some of the recent digital inclusion studies, there are a number of things that are barriers to people, but it's things like affordability, the confidence to access the digital economy, and the devices. And so the goal for us is sort of trying to create a package that helps households not just get online but also thrive online, whether that's through their personal life or being able to start their own business, or whatever that looks like.
I think you highlighted a really important point just a little bit earlier. Sorry, just because my ears always prick up when we mention, because we are a users association, but it's actually quite important to have people like yourself involved, because there are areas where we can collaborate and speak with a joined up voice. And that's so important, because in areas of you talked about spectrum. Spectrum to a user association may seem to be a little bit technical, but if it's not being used right or delivered right, who's missing out? It's the user on the end, right? It's not necessarily WombatNet. I mean, you'd love it, but it's maybe stringing along though. But yeah, you know what I mean. So I think it's really important we do, work together where we can, collaborate. So, I mean, I know I've been certainly appreciative of you being involved with the organisation, and we've given you an award now too. So yeah. Hey, look, you started this business way before many of us started our careers. So what's one surprising insight you've gained around the relationship between technology users that you think would resonate with the wider audience in New Zealand?
Yeah, well, I mean, going back to TUANZ, I think it's a really an invaluable organization, and obviously it's been around longer than I've been alive. And as you say, with it being a users organization or focused on users, there aren't, that I know of, really any other organizations that do the same thing. And so I think it's it's about bringing the discussion together. It's one of the few places where where you can get small providers, the big telcos, the users, and the policymakers all in the same room. And that sort of helps cut through some of the echo chambers, where we're too focused on a singular issue, and helps sort of keep the focus on outcomes for people, not just the technology hype, like we've seen with 5G and AI and all that sort of stuff. We need to actually be talking about the real world issues that need to be worked on and being solved right now. And so that balance is essential. And I think that when you've got users and builders in the same conversation, policy also does land a lot better. The strength of TUANZ is that it doesn't do the work for us, but it helps give us the platforms and tools to do it together.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've sort of found, stepping back a bit, with me being involved in quite a number of associations, or at least for my age, I've been able to sort of see the different structures and environments. And I think too many associations sort of tend to lose sight of their mission, as leadership changes, and sort of the core philosophy is buried, and they just sort of tend to become talk shops. And so I think TUANZ is an organisation that has been able to demonstrate that the core principles are still there and are still at the core of everything that you do. And I think that with where we are now in the world in terms of what society's looking like, obviously TUANZ isn't going to fix the world's problems, but we need to be doing everything that we can to be connecting with each other and talking about the real issues that are on the ground that are impacting the people without voices.
Yeah. Hey, look, it's been a real pleasure talking with you, Alex. We don't get a chance often to sit down and do these sort of conversations because we often see each other in environments where we're really busy, or someone's running something, or someone. This year I've started asking people at the end of our conversations to finish up with this final question of what 2 books, and look, you're young, so I'll let you have websites or podcasts, not books, that you're reading or you've read that you'd recommend to people listening in.
Well, I'll probably give you a bit of a different answer than some of your previous guests. I'd say I probably actually learn best through real world conversations and doing. I actually have ADHD, which means I often leave books half read. I've got a bookshelf out there, a whole shelf of books with tissues as bookmarks about a third of the way through. So I don't really have any book recommendations for you. But yeah, it's for me, it's less about finishing a book and more about constantly listening and asking better questions and learning from the people that we serve. But in terms of actual recommendations I could provide, I mean, I'm really interested in current affairs. I always try and keep up to date. I think I couldn't do without my Herald Premium subscription. It helps keep me grounded in what's happening, and I try my best to sort of filter through the noise to get to what really matters. I do enjoy reading Bill Bennett's blog. He's been around for a long time, and frankly, I think we don't have many independent voices covering our tech sector in depth and in detail like that. So I really do value that. And personally, for to keep me sanity during long drives and the like, I'll admit I'm a true crime fan. My favorite podcasts are Case File and Crime Junkie. They're my 2 favorite podcasts, and I just use those to pass my time. But yeah, as I say, I think most of my learning it comes from listening twice as much, and as I say, asking good questions to those who are here right now, and who have been there before me. Yeah.
Hey, look, thanks so much, Alex. For those of you listening in, you can go back and listen to this again on any of the podcast channels. And why don't you subscribe? Because, we've done 52 issues and episodes, and there might be something back there you want to hear. It's also on our YouTube channel, and it's on our website as well. You can see the speakers that we've been talking to. And next month, I'm talking with Paul James, who's the government CIO at the Department of Internal Affairs, and I think that's going to be a fascinating conversation around where he's saying government going. But otherwise, thank you, Alex. Much appreciated. And ka kite.
Oh, no, thank you so much for having me, Craig. I mean, I think it's, incredibly valuable to see, leaders like yourself actually demonstrating that, they're interested in platforming voices like my own. And I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much, Craig.
All right. Thank you.